As usual, with this being a sped-up screen recording, watch out for flashing colors and images. Be careful. Hello, it's Moonkitty again with another pixel art speed paint. In fact, it's the son of the last one. You might remember that about a year and a half ago, I made a bunch of tiny pixel headshots for the StoneClan NeoCities website. Well, they were good as color references for me, but there were a lot of problems with them. The first issue was that they're only headshots, and I would assume to myself that I remembered how the rest of the cat's body looked and not bother looking it up. And I was often, very frequently, wrong about this. Even though I designed these characters, there are over 100 of them to keep track of now, so I'm constantly forgetting their designs. While I can usually remember their names and actors, after that point I've proven to be unreliable. Part of that is probably that the designs are sharing space in my head with canon warrior cat designs as well. This also led to an issue where somebody would be drawing the back half of their character for months in a certain way, and then when it eventually showed the back half in some StoneClan episode somewhere, it would be completely different from what they were drawing, and I would be completely unaware that they were drawing it differently, because I didn't even know that I hadn't drawn the entire body. Starting with a full body shot on the sprites means that nobody's going to be confused later. That said, I should probably make some alternate side versions for cats with asymmetrical designs, of which there are at least a few, and I should just stop making those, honestly. The second issue is that the old template had heavy shading on it. While being something that I didn't really struggle with, it caused patrons to be confused about the designs, more specifically, the way that the ear and nose bridge were shaded. This made people assume that ears were darker when they weren't, or cats had colored nose bridges when they didn't, and sometimes if the ear was a little bit lighter than the rest of the body, they assumed that there wasn't any change. Likewise, I often even had to remove nose bridge shading just so nose bridge markings could be seen. And that heavy shading made it just more work for me. Often when I wasn't really feeling into making a headshot sprite later on in the life of these, I was making some truly lazy ones that looked worse than those I spent more time on. The smaller size makes it easier to not fuss too much with the fluff shapes and details because there's less pixels to work with, so I finished these in half the time I would finish one of the 2023 ones. That said, for some variety, and partially inspired by the very cute artwork in the Clan Gen game and the way that it makes all of the cats look a bit unique, I made 4 different poses to work from for this. I'm thinking I might make new poses in the future and retire old ones as we cycle more characters into StoneClan, or as I get bored or just randomly, who knows, but I can never honestly say what I'm going to do a few days from now, let alone in the future. They keep asking me on the Patreon server if I'm going to make more for the StarClan cats or the cats in the other clans, and I have no idea. I might do it tomorrow, I might do it after I'm done recording this, I might never do that. Any promise or hypothetical video that I've teased or talked about in the past, I might make, or I might not make, or I might forget about completely. I'm just extremely untrustworthy. I also wanted to make the style for these a little bit sillier than the headshot portraits, which felt like they were taking themselves too seriously, before I settled on the headshot style because it was a bit more generic and adult than the more kittenish immediate look that I was considering, but for these I went for big, opened, frightened-looking eyes that were half the size of the cat's face, which I think is hilarious. I didn't make them this big for any practical reason. I was going to have a couple weirder poses, but I decided against anything that wouldn't at least show me the patterns on the side of the cat, because it would be counterproductive to using these as a reference. This standing pose ended up being pretty useful in the small size that I had because I turned the head to the side just slightly, although you'll see me struggling a bit trying to make the far eye smaller while not making it look like it's a totally different eye, and placing the muzzle properly on this blob of a cat. But the way that the head ended up being angled allowed me to better show cheek and nose bridge markings on certain characters, which was great even though this is a little bit less cute than the first two. Don't ask me why I shaded this template green though. It doesn't make any sense, it was not useful for any situation, and I had to change it every single time that I made a new sprite. There were a couple other problems that I had to change later too, including some semi-transparency on the eyes and the outlines, which I didn't fully fix, but on some of them I did, and also the stray pixel, which isn't actually stray, it was implied to be like part of the shape on the sitting pose. It's at the corner of its front paw. It's supposed to be part of the shape of the paw, but it actually just looks like a third claw, which looks really weird. That said, I never actually permanently got rid of the green inner lines on the standing pose. I just left it there and changed it every time. Wow, I was having a harder time with that nose than I remember. Anyway, I did use this template for a lot of cats that had longer noses early on, but very, very quickly I dropped that and started just making them in whatever order I had the templates open in. That said, like I mentioned before, I was switching to this if I needed to show a nose bridge marking, or if I needed to show all 4 paws and I was previously using this sitting or laying poses. My ideal when designing any character for any reason is to put as little as possible on paws and on legs. I occasionally do it anyway just to spice things up a little bit, but if I can help it, I try not to put anything on the legs because that's the thing that's most likely to move, and also I always forget leg markings. Here's me starting to make a weird looking one before deciding that it would make a very bad reference. Rest in peace, weird curled up cat. You almost lived before common sense appeared in my heart. I know that it would have worked for cats without body markings, but there just aren't enough of those to justify it. I wasn't sure if I could actually display it coherently either, to be honest with you. Then I moved on to what is probably my least favorite out of these, and it's a laying down pose. It's not great. There's too much space on the head, like extra space, and maybe I'll just retire it. My entire process with pixel art is just wiggling things around until it looks okay, and I clearly didn't wiggle this one around enough. Sorry to laying down pose. I do like the body and the little tail, but I'm not terribly fond of the head. The head bothers me. It's just not as cute as the other ones. It's got too much extra padding on the side. I initially had the head looking to the side, which I thought was going to be okay, but I had trouble making it look like the eye was the same eye on the other cats. It looked a little bit too cutesy, a little bit less terrified, so I definitely moved the head back. Not that the terrified eyes aren't also cutesy, mind you. They are totally cutesy, but they are very funny, and those eyes are not very funny at all. Oh no, I'm watching this earlier iteration go by, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh no, I like that better, go back, go back. To be fair, it doesn't look so bad once the cats have their fluff and their cheek fluff and everything. It looks much more normal, and I did end up using it for a lot of cats that have more cheek fluff and are fluffier in general, so it works out. It worked out fine, but I'm probably going to replace it eventually here. Not replace the ones that I already made, but just make a new laying down pose that I use from then on. The poses definitely give a good excuse for me to make new ones when I get tired of them. Much like last time, I made the initial art all in one layer. So what you see me doing here is separating my template into 2 layers. My first layer is the line art and interior line art that I set to multiply. And my second layer is the base color and the eye color. These templates don't have a bunch of shading like the older one does, but it still makes it a lot easier. I don't really separate the eyes properly on every single one of these, and that's because I wasn't sure how I was going to do the eyes yet. I was initially planning on making it so that all 4 pixels of the interior eye were the interior eye color, but I very quickly noticed that a lot of the cats don't actually have dark enough interior eye colors for that to look good on a tiny image, especially not cats like Willowfoot, who have incredibly light inner eyes for no good reason at all. Willowfoot's inner eye color that I already established like a year ago, so I can't go back on my detested. So I eventually settled on just the top right pixel being colored in. As you can see, even though the fluffier cats and cats with bigger cheeks are definitely taking me more time than the other cats, it is way, way faster for me to complete one of these than it was before. Skywing was like, blink and you'll miss it just there. Like I said before, while I was early on kind of putting them on specific templates, I dropped that like 5-6 pixel cats in. Most of these guys just kind of ended up on whatever sprite template, and I think that's fine. Although there were a few that I started on either the laying down or sitting pose, and then I was like, wait, only one of their paws is white, or only one of their paws isn't white, and I had to change over. I'm making them pretty much in the same order I made them in the last video, which is kinda fun, but I am gonna skip ahead a bit in the footage and skip over a couple of these cats. I hope it's not too disappointing. Over the next few days after these recordings, I did finish every single cat, or at least every single active cat who is in Stone Clan. I did not do the Star Clan cats, and I did not do the Stick Clan cats. I also briefly streamed myself working on these in the Patreon server. More brief than I would have liked, because I forgot I was already doing something that day. So Sunnyfall came into the voice chat to, collect me. In my defense, remembering things is impossible. If this is your first time watching a Moonkitty video and you have no idea what Stone Clan is, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown. So in my Patreon server, we have infrequent events called voice calls, where I allow people to voice characters in my short videos. I don't ask for second takes, and I just go with however they do it, as long as it's legible, as it's a Patreon reward and not any type of job. But there are only so many characters that I can fit into a voice call, and a million patrons with the voices roll, so I can't always give everybody a place in a video. So for the last few years, Stone Clan has been a way to get into a video without having to be there for the voice call or be the first to be there for a voice call. So anybody with the voices roll in my Patreon server can see the Join Stone Clan channel. This is where they can send MP3 or WAV files of them just saying random things as a cat. Well, as long as it's within the guidelines, as in not being inappropriate, not swearing, not referencing too much human pop culture, and not being any kind of romantic interaction. And then I will fish through that channel and try to compose a video from those voice clips. When choosing, I try to keep track of how long it's been since someone has been in a video, and go for the older ones and completely new users first. If they don't have a cat yet, I design and name one usually and hand it out. They're free to do anything they want with this as a character, put it on Toy House, make up a backstory for it, anything, as long as they don't mind that the character probably won't end up being the same or exactly the same or having the same friends or having the same lore in the videos. I try to be accommodating, but sometimes things just don't line up, or I am just completely unaware they exist. With this many cats and this many users, it's kind of impossible for me to keep track of all the lore and keep it straight. It makes you kind of start to sympathize with the fictional character called Aaron Hunter. As far as the direction that Stone Clan takes goes, I don't. I don't direct it. I don't try to control any element of the narrative, and I don't decide what's happening until I've collected a good amount of voice lines to support it. So that's why you might have seen an episode or two of Stone Clan floating around and gone, well, that made no sense at all. But my goal isn't really Stone Clan making proper sense or being a full story. My goal is really Stone Clan being more coherent than a dream. It's never about to make sense because there's no actual writing or directing involved, just a bunch of me composing the lines the patrons make together, occasionally adding something to make it make sense, and there's hundreds of characters, with new ones appearing all the time. The idea that anyone can follow whatever plot is happening is kind of a miracle. Not to say there's no lore at all, because I have control over the backstory of the clan, and Stick Clan, and the Whisker domain to some extent, so all of the outside forces, like what Stone Clan is, and who the people around Stone Clan are, that's something that I've been writing, but everything that happens, like as far as what the characters are doing, where they're going, who they are, that's just dependent on voice lines. Likewise, I don't really think any sort of conclusion to anything is ever going to feel satisfying in Stone Clan, because that would take planning and thought. But that's the fun of internet content too. It doesn't need to be good, it doesn't need to justify its own existence. A video can exist just for the purpose of playing around, for having fun, for being a canvas for people's characters to exist in, or people's voices to exist in. There's no company standing behind me saying, oh, you need to make good entertainment. I don't care to make good entertainment. I care to have fun making it and have other people have fun making it. Stone Clan videos take longer to make, usually, than my other ones. They take more steps. I need to go in and find all the audio clips and compose them while I'm sketching the video, which means I'll be going back and forth between my Flash canvas and my Discord search bar for hours on end, and only have a small amount to work with afterwards. And on top of that, Stone Clan really doesn't get ad revenue or views for how much effort they take to make. There's really no money in it overall, but what Stone Clan is for me is fun because so many people in the Patreon are so interested interested and engaged with it. It's something that they can be a part of and contribute to, and their interest makes me more motivated to work on it, even though I'm not really getting that much out of it, like monetarily. It's much more like a game than a job when I have so many people to surprise with it. Honestly, if you're not in StoneClan but have been watching it, let me know in the comments who your favorite character is or what your favorite bit is, because the patrons who voice these characters will get a lot out of it. Whenever they find somebody, like a comment from somebody who isn't in the Patreon talking about StoneClan or a StoneClan character, they become giddy. Right now, if I have one overall goal with StoneClan, it's just to unsplit the party. I've made the mistake of allowing several groups of characters to wander off without coming back after, and that's made it so suddenly every time I need to find a cat saying something more specific for an interaction, I end up finding a whole bunch of lines from users whose cats are currently off doing something else and I can't have them in camp. But because I don't direct StoneClan, I need to get creative with how I solve this problem, and that's kind of a fun element of putting it together too. Sometimes I make Frankenstein's monster lines out of several other lines just to make things work, which makes StoneClan kind of slip into the YouTube poop territory, and maybe closer into the is this a dream or not territory, but I'm pretty sure it isn't. It's not a dream. The sprites I've been working on, something that I should have said way earlier, are for the Neo Cities allegiances that I have set up for them. Well, and also as full body color references for me. I'll link the allegiances in the description if you want to scroll through them, but that's about it. I wanted to update these images so that I would stop making mistakes and needed to actually dedicate some time to it so that I finished them all at once, thus I made it into a speed paint. It probably never would have happened, or wouldn't have happened for several months if I hadn't. And while I did make dozens more of these in the past week, I'm gonna cut it off about here. Thanks for watching and listening to me ramble.